The 20th rejection cut deeper than all the others combined. Cale Thornridge stood at the edge of the ceremonial grounds, watching as Mira, the latest wolf to deny him, walked away without a backward glance. Her shoulders were squared, her head held high, and she disappeared into the crowd of celebrating pack members as if he didn't exist, as if his Sigma status made him invisible, unworthy even of common courtesy. Around him, the mating ritual continued. Wolves paired off on the full moon, their joy palpable in the electric air. Laughter echoed through the ancient forest clearing. Bodies moved together in the sacred dances passed down through generations. But Cale remained alone, a shadow at the periphery of pack life, exactly where he'd always been. 20 women, 20 rejections over the course of 5 years. Each one had found some reason. His lack of pack standing, his preference for solitude, the darkness that clung to him like a second skin. Some had been cruel in their dismissal. Others had been kind but firm. The result was always the same. He was not enough. The Sigma wolf within him snarled, a wounded beast that had taken too many blows. Unlike alphas who commanded or betas who followed, Sigmas existed outside the hierarchy entirely, independent, powerful in their own right, but belonging nowhere. It made them dangerous, unpredictable. Most packs barely tolerated their presence, and the Shadowmere pack was no exception. Cale turned away from the festivities, his massive frame cutting through the darkness as he headed toward the forest. He needed to run, to let his wolf take over and silence the thoughts that threatened to consume him. The transformation came easily, too easily, perhaps. His bones cracked and reformed, fur erupted across his skin, and within seconds a massive charcoal-gray wolf stood where the man had been. He ran for hours, pushing his body until his muscles screamed and his lungs burned. But no amount of physical exertion could outrun the fundamental truth. He was unwanted. His wolf was too dominant for most females, his human side too scarred by years of isolation. Even among a species defined by primal instincts and raw power, he was too much, or perhaps not enough. Dawn was breaking when he finally returned to his cabin on the outskirts of pack territory. It was a modest structure, built by his own hands from timber he'd felled himself, remote enough that he rarely encountered other wolves, close enough that he couldn't be accused of abandoning the pack entirely. A perfect reflection of his existence, close to belonging but never quite achieving it. He shifted back to human form and stood naked on his porch, letting the cool morning air wash over his heated skin. His body bore the evidence of his nature, scars from fights, tattoos marking significant hunts, muscles built from years of solitary training. He was not unattractive, he knew. Several of the women who rejected him had admitted as much before walking away. It wasn't his appearance they rejected. It was his soul. Cale showered and dressed, then did what he always did after rejection. He went to work. The Alpha King's estate lay at the heart of Shadowmere territory, a sprawling compound that housed not just a royal family, but hundreds of staff members who kept pack life running smoothly. Cale worked in security, a position that suited his skills perfectly. He could disappear into the shadows, watch without being watched, protect without being thanked. The morning briefing was tense. Alpha King Aldrich Shadowmere stood at the head of the conference table, his presence commanding absolute attention. Beside him stood his beta and several high-ranking wolves, all discussing increased rogue activity near the northern border. 3 attacks in as many weeks, Aldrich said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. They're testing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. I want patrols doubled, and his eyes landed on Cale, standing at the back of the room. Thornridge, you'll take point on the night watches. Your particular skills make you ideal for solo reconnaissance. It wasn't a compliment, though it might have sounded like one. Cale understood the subtext perfectly. He was being sent alone because he worked best alone, because no one wanted to partner with him, because his Sigma nature made him a liability in team situations. The other wolves in the room shifted uncomfortably, a few exchanging glances that confirmed what Cale already knew. Understood, Alpha, Cale said, his voice flat and emotionless. The briefing continued, but Cale's mind wandered. He noticed her then, a flash of movement beyond the glass doors that led to the main estate. A woman he'd never seen before, carrying fresh linens through the hallway. She moved with unconscious grace, her dark hair pulled back in a simple braid, her uniform marking her as part of the household staff. Something about her made his wolf sit up and take notice, but he pushed the feeling aside. He'd learned long ago not to indulge in impossible fantasies. The meeting ended, and Cale spent the rest of the day preparing for his night patrol. He checked his weapons, reviewed territorial maps, and tried not to think about the mating ritual or the woman whose face he couldn't quite forget. As the sun set, he shifted and headed into the forest, letting instinct guide him toward the northern border where danger lurked. The night was quiet, too quiet. Cale's enhanced senses picked up traces of rogue wolves, their scent markers deliberately placed to intimidate. They wanted the pack to know they were there, wanted to spread fear, but they hadn't crossed into Shadowmere territory yet, which meant they were waiting for something, or someone. Cale was so focused on tracking the rogue scents that he almost missed the other presence in the forest. Almost. His wolf alerted him a split second before he heard the footsteps. Light, hurried, moving through the underbrush with the clumsiness of someone unfamiliar with the terrain. He melted into the shadows and watched as a figure emerged into a small clearing. It was her, the woman from the estate, now wearing civilian clothes and carrying what looked like a bundle of supplies. She was alone, vulnerable, and heading directly toward the area where Cale had detected rogue activity. Every instinct screamed at him to intervene. He shifted back to human form, grabbing the spare clothes he kept stashed in a nearby hollow, and stepped into her path. She gasped, stumbling backward. What? You're not supposed to be here, Cale said, his voice rough from hours in wolf form. Up close, she was even more striking than he'd realized. Her eyes were an unusual amber color, almost gold in the moonlight, and despite her obvious fear, she stood her ground. I'm aware, she said, lifting her chin defiantly. I have business that doesn't concern you. Everything in this forest concerns me tonight. I'm on patrol and you're in danger. He moved closer, noting how she tensed but didn't retreat. Brave or foolish. He couldn't tell which. The rogues have been marking this area. If they find you, I can take care of myself. Cale studied her, really looked at her, and realized something he'd missed before. She bore no pack scent, no marking that would identify her as Shadowmere. But she also didn't smell entirely human. There was something muted about her presence, as if she were deliberately hiding what she was. What are you? He asked softly. Her eyes flashed with something. Anger, fear, determination. Someone who's trying to help her brother. He got mixed up with the rogues, and they're holding him hostage. They sent me a message, told me to bring supplies to this location by midnight or they'd kill him. The pieces clicked into place. She was walking into a trap, and she knew it, but she was doing it anyway. The bundle she carried likely contained food, medicine, possibly weapons. Everything the rogues would need to sustain a longer siege against the pack. You're being used, Cale said. They'll take what you bring, and they'll kill you both anyway. That's how rogues operate. I have to try. Her voice broke on the last word, revealing the desperation beneath her brave facade. He's all I have left. Our parents died last year, and he's just a kid, barely 18. He was stupid and angry and looking for someone to belong, and they took advantage of that. I can't let him die because he made a mistake. Something in Cale's chest cracked open. He recognized that desperation, that bone-deep need to matter to someone, to belong somewhere. It was the same hunger that had driven him to endure 20 rejections, hoping that one woman might see past his Sigma status to the man beneath. What's your name? He asked. She hesitated, then seemed to decide he was a lesser threat compared to what waited in the darkness. Elena Thorne. I work at the Alpha King's estate, in housekeeping. I've been there for 6 months, ever since. She stopped herself. It doesn't matter. I need to go. They're expecting me. Elena, Cale repeated, tasting her name. His wolf stirred with interest, a feeling he immediately suppressed. I'm Cale, and I'm going to help you. Why? Suspicion colored her tone. You don't know me. This isn't your problem. Because I'm the one who's supposed to be protecting this territory, which means protecting everyone in it. even stubborn housekeepers who run toward danger instead of away from it. He held out his hand. Give me the supplies. I'll deliver them and scout the situation. You're not walking into that camp alone. But my brother will have a better chance if I assess the situation first. I'm a trained fighter. Elena, you're not. When she still hesitated, he softened his tone. I know what it's like to feel powerless. Let me help you. Please. The please seemed to decide it. Elena handed over the bundle, and Cale could feel the weight of her trust settling on his shoulders like a physical thing. He hadn't realized how much he craved exactly this. Someone depending on him, believing he could make a difference. Stay here, he ordered. Don't move. Don't make a sound. If anything goes wrong, run back to the estate and alert Alpha Aldrich. Can you do that? Elena nodded, her eyes wide but determined. Cale shifted again, the transformation now carrying a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He took the bundle in his jaws and disappeared into the forest, following the scent markers to the rogue camp. What he found made his blood run cold. There were more rogues than anticipated, at least 15, maybe 20. They'd set up a temporary camp just beyond Shadowmere's borders, far enough to claim neutrality, but close enough to launch quick attacks. And in the center of the camp, tied to a tree and looking terrified, was a young man who had to be Elena's brother. Cale circled the camp silently, taking mental notes. Guard rotations, weak points in their perimeter, escape routes. The rogues were confident, almost cocky. They'd been operating without significant resistance for weeks, and it had made them sloppy. He approached from downwind and dropped the bundle near the camp's edge, then let out a low howl, a signal that could mean anything from a territorial warning to a hunting call. The rogues reacted immediately, several of them shifting as they investigated the noise. Cale led them on a chase through the forest, using his knowledge of the terrain to stay just ahead of them. When he'd drawn enough wolves away from the camp, he doubled back, moving like smoke through the shadows. The young man, Elena's brother, saw him coming and went rigid with fear. Cale shifted partially, enough to use his hands while maintaining enhanced strength and senses. He made quick work of the ropes binding the boy, then pressed a finger to his lips in a universal gesture for silence. The boy nodded frantically. They were almost to the tree line when a voice rang out behind them. Leaving so soon? Cale spun, putting himself between the boy and the rogue Alpha, who'd emerged from the largest tent. The man was massive even by werewolf standards, his body covered in scars that spoke of countless battles. His smile was cruel. I thought we made it clear what would happen if anyone interfered with our business, the rogue Alpha said. The girl was supposed to come alone. Did she send you? Poor choice. The girl isn't involved anymore, Cale growled. Neither is the boy. This is between you and me now. The rogue Alpha laughed, a sound like grinding glass. You think you can take all of us? Brave. Stupid, but brave. He gestured, and wolves emerged in the shadows, surrounding Cale and the boy. Who are you anyway? You don't smell like pack. I'm the one who's going to give you a chance to leave Shadowmere territory and never come back. Cale said, Take it. Or what? Cale let his true nature show through. Not just as wolf, but the Sigma power that made him separate from the hierarchy, the dangerous independence that made Alphas nervous. The air around him crackled with energy, and several of the surrounding rogues stepped back involuntarily. Or I'll remind you why Sigmas are feared, Cale said softly. The rogue Alpha's expression changed, confidence giving way to calculation. Sigmas were rare, and their power was unpredictable. They could match Alphas in raw strength, but fought without the restraint of pack politics or loyalty. They were wild cards, dangerous precisely because they had nothing to lose. A Sigma? The rogue Alpha spat the word. Even better, the Shadowmere pack must be desperate if they're using rejects for security. The word stung, but Cale had heard worse. Last chance. Leave or I make you leave. For a moment, the standoff held. Then the rogue Alpha nodded, and the wolves attacked as one. Cale fought like the world was ending. He shifted fully, using his larger wolf form to his advantage, but he also relied on techniques he developed during years of solitary training. He fought dirty, targeting weak points, using the rogues' numbers against them by forcing them to get in each other's way. Blood flew. Bones cracked. Cale took damage. A slash across his ribs, a bite to his shoulder. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Elena's brother was counting on him. And somewhere in the forest, Elena herself was waiting to see if her trust had been misplaced. The fight seemed to last hours, but was probably only minutes. When it ended, the rogue alpha lay unconscious. 3 of his wolves were too injured to continue, and the rest had fled. Cale stood panting, his wolf form covered in blood. Some his, most not. He shifted back to human, wincing at the pain in his ribs, and looked at Elena's brother. The boy was staring at him with a mixture of awe and terror. "Can you walk?" Cale asked. The boy nodded. "Then let's get you home." Elena was exactly where he'd left her, though she looked ready to sprint into danger if needed. When she saw her brother, she let out a choked sob and ran forward, wrapping him in her arms. The boy, he gave his name as Marcus during the walk back, was crying too, apologizing between sobs. Cale hung back, giving them space. He was covered in blood and sweat, his body screaming with exhaustion, but he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Satisfaction. He'd done something that mattered. He'd saved someone. Elena finally turned to him, her eyes shining with tears. "You're hurt. I'll heal." Werewolf regeneration was already working, knitting torn flesh and bruised bone. "You saved him. You saved us both." She stepped closer, seeming not to care about the blood. "How can I ever thank you?" "You don't have to." "I want to." She reached up and cupped his face, her touch gentle despite the roughness of his beard and the gore covering his skin. "You're different from what I expected." "What did you expect?" "A monster, maybe." That's what people say about Sigmas. That you're dangerous, unpredictable, that you can't be trusted. Her thumb brushed his cheekbone, and Cale felt his wolf rumble with pleasure at the contact. "But you're not a monster. You're a hero." Cale wanted to argue, to explain that he'd only done what anyone would do, but the words died in his throat, because he saw something in Elena's eyes that he'd never seen directed at him before. Genuine admiration, respect, and beneath that, something warmer. Interest. "We should get Marcus to the healers," he said, stepping back before he could do something foolish. "And I need to report to Alpha Aldrich about the rogues." Elena nodded, but there was a promise in her eyes. This isn't over, Cale Thornridge. The next few days were a blur of activity. Alpha Aldrich launched a coordinated assault on the rogue camp, using the intelligence Cale had gathered to strike decisively. The rogues were scattered, their alpha imprisoned, and the threat to Shadowmere neutralized. Cale was commended for his actions, though the praise fell hollow coming from wolves who'd never shown him respect before. What wasn't hollow was Elena's gratitude. She sought him out the day after the raid, finding him in his state's training yard where he was working through combat forms despite his still healing injuries. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she observed, appearing beside him with a towel and water bottle. "Healing requires movement," Cale replied, accepting the water. "The more I move, the faster the tissue regenerates." "Is that true, or is it just an excuse to torture yourself?" He smiled despite himself. "Maybe both." Elena settled onto a nearby bench, watching him with those striking amber eyes. Up close, in daylight, he could see flecks of green in them, like sunlight through autumn leaves. She was beautiful, but it was more than that. There was an intelligence in her gaze, a depth that suggested she'd seen hardship and survived it. "Marcus wants to thank you properly," she said. "He's mortified about the whole situation, convinced he's ruined our lives. I told him that everyone makes mistakes, especially when they're grieving." Her expression clouded. "Our parents were everything to us. When we lost them, Marcus didn't know how to cope. The rogues promised him a new family, a place to belong. He was desperate enough to believe them." Cale understood that desperation intimately. "Where are you from originally? You don't have pack scent." Elena looked away, her jaw tightening. "We're from the Riverside Pack, about 200 miles north. When our parents died, the new Alpha decided we were inconvenient. My father had been his political rival, and having his children around was a reminder of that. So he exiled us, gave us 72 hours to leave pack lands. That's illegal. Werewolf law was clear. Pack members couldn't be exiled without cause, especially not juveniles. It is, Elena agreed, but who was going to challenge him? We were orphans with no allies. So we came here, to Shadowmere. I lied on my employment application, claimed we were independent wolves looking for work. The Alpha King staff doesn't scrutinize housekeepers too closely. She met his eyes. Are you going to report me? Cale should have. Technically, Elena and Marcus were in Shadowmere territory illegally, but he thought of his own precarious position, of how many times he'd been made to feel like he didn't belong despite being born into the pack. No, he said. Your secret is safe. Relief washed over her features. Thank you. Again, you keep saving us. Maybe I'm just in the right place at the right time. Or maybe you're exactly what you appear to be. Someone who helps people because it's the right thing to do, not because you'll get something from it. Elena stood and moved closer, close enough that Cale could smell her scent. Jasmine and something uniquely her own. Why do they treat you like an outsider? You're obviously loyal to the pack. You risk your life for wolves who don't even thank you. I'm Sigma, Cale said, as if that explained everything. We don't fit into pack hierarchy. Alphas see us as threats. Betas don't know how to interact with us. We're neither leaders nor followers, which makes us uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, Elena repeated, her tone thoughtful. My father used to say that people who make others uncomfortable are usually the ones telling truths no one wants to hear. Your father sounds like he was wise. He was. Sadness tinged her voice. He would have liked you, I think. He valued integrity over status. They talked until the sun set, sharing stories and discovering unexpected commonalities. Both were outsiders in their own ways. Both had learned to find strength in isolation. And both, Cale realized with a mixture of hope and fear, were lonely in a specific way that comes from being surrounded by people but understood by none of them. When Elena finally left, Cale stood in the gathering darkness and let himself acknowledge what he'd been denying. He was drawn to her in a way he'd never experienced before. Not the superficial attraction he'd felt toward the women at the mating rituals, but something deeper. Something that terrified him because he knew how this story ended. She would reject him too, eventually. They always did. But the days turned into weeks, and Elena didn't reject him. Instead, she sought him out regularly, often bringing him food during his patrol breaks or finding excuses to linger when he visited the estate. They talked about everything, philosophy, pack politics, their hopes for the future. Marcus, who'd been assigned to work in his state's gardens as penance for his rogue involvement, often joined them, clearly grateful to Cale for the second chance. Cale tried to maintain distance, to protect himself from the inevitable heartbreak. But Elena was persistent. She showed up at his cabin one evening, carrying a basket of food and wearing a determined expression. You're going to have dinner with me, she announced, pushing past him into the small space. And you're going to stop acting like spending time with me is a chore. I never said. You didn't have to. You keep pulling away every time we get close to something. She set the basket on his table and turned to face him. Why? What are you afraid of? The question hung between them. Cale could have deflected, made an excuse, but Elena's directness deserved honesty. I've been rejected by 20 women, he said quietly. 20 wolves who looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the risk. I'm afraid that if I let myself care about you, you'll do the same. And I don't think I can survive another rejection. Not from you. Elena crossed the space between them and took his hands in hers. Cale Thornridge, I have never in my life met anyone less deserving of rejection. You're brave, loyal, kind, and strong. You saved my brother's life without expecting anything in return. You protected me and kept my secrets when you had every reason not to. Her grip tightened. Those 20 women were fools. But I'm not them. Elena, I'm not asking you to mate with me tomorrow, she interrupted. I'm just asking you to give us a chance. Let me get to know you, really know you, and let yourself be known. Can you do that? Cale's wolf was practically howling with approval, urging him to accept what she offered. His human side was more cautious, scarred by repeated disappointment. But looking into Elena's eyes, Seeing sincerity there, he found himself nodding. "I can try." Elena's smile was radiant. "Then let's start with dinner." They ate together on his porch, watching the sun set over the forest. Elena talked about her childhood in the Riverside Pack, her parents' love story, her dreams of finding a place where she and Marcus could truly belong. Cale shared his own history, the confusion of adolescence as a Sigma, the isolation that came with not fitting into pack structures, the sting of each rejection. They were looking for someone to complete them, Elena observed. But you don't need completing. You're already whole. That's what scares them, that you don't need to pack the way they do. It was the most insightful thing anyone had ever said about his Sigma nature. Cale stared at her, something fundamental shifting in his chest. "How did you know that?" he asked. "Because I feel the same way sometimes. When our alpha exiled us, it hurt, but it also freed us. I realized I didn't need his approval to know my worth." She leaned against his shoulder, the gesture casual but intimate. "Maybe that's why we understand each other. We both learned to stand alone." "Maybe," Cale agreed, "but standing alone is easier when someone stands with you." Elena tilted her head to look up at him. "Is that your way of saying you want me around?" "Yes." The admission felt dangerous, like stepping off a cliff without knowing if he could fly. "I want you around." "I want." He stopped, unsure how to articulate the tangle of emotions in his chest. "Tell me." Elena urged softly. "I want to believe this could work. That I could be enough for someone. That maybe all those rejections were just the universe's way of saving me for you." He laughed shakily. "That sounds ridiculous." "It sounds perfect." The weeks that followed were the happiest of Cale's life. He and Elena fell into a rhythm. Dinners at his cabin, walks through the forest, stolen moments at the estate when she could slip away from her duties. Marcus, thriving under structure and acceptance, became a fixture in their lives, the brother Cale had never had. But happiness, Cale had learned, was often temporary. The trouble started when rumors began circulating about Elena's origins. Someone had noticed inconsistencies in her employment records, questions about her past. The Pax Beta, a wolf named Garrett who'd never liked Cale, started investigating. "You need to be careful," Cale warned Elena one evening. They were at his cabin again, and she was curled against his side in a way that felt both natural and miraculous. "Garrett is digging into your background. If he discovers you're from Riverside, that you were exiled, Alpha Aldrich will kick us out," Elena finished. She'd gone pale but lifted her chin with characteristic defiance. "Then we'll go somewhere else. We've done it before." "You shouldn't have to." Cale's wolf snarled at the injustice of it. "You've done nothing wrong. You're a valuable member of this pack, and Marcus has proven himself too. Your exile was illegal and immoral, but it still happened." Elena pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself. "That's the reality, Cale. Sometimes terrible things happen to people who don't deserve them, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. There has to be something." "There isn't." Her voice cracked. "And even if there were, I wouldn't ask you to sacrifice yourself for us. You've done enough. More than enough." Cale stood, frustrated energy coursing through him. "What if I went to Alpha Aldrich myself? Explained the situation, asked for asylum for you both? On what grounds? We're not his problem. We're barely his employees." Elena shook her head. "No. We've been lucky to have these months here. If it ends, it ends. At least we'll have the memories." "Memories aren't enough," Cale growled. "Not anymore. Elena, these past weeks with you, they've changed everything. I don't want to go back to being alone. I don't want to lose you." She looked at him with such sadness it made his chest ache. "You might not have a choice." The investigation accelerated. Garrett presented his findings to Alpha Aldrich, including evidence that Elena and Marcus had been exiled from Riverside Pack under suspicious circumstances. A council meeting was called to determine their fate. Cale attended uninvited, standing at the back of the council chamber as Elena and Marcus were brought before the Alpha King. Elena looked terrified but composed, Marcus wide-eyed and trembling. "Elena Thorne," Alpha Aldrich said, his voice carrying the weight of judgment, "you stand accused of gaining employment under false pretenses and residing in Shadowmere territory without permission. How do you answer these charges? Guilty, Alpha. Elena's voice was steady. I lied about our origins because we had nowhere else to go. I wanted to give my brother a chance at a normal life, away from the pack that rejected us. I'm sorry for the deception, but I'm not sorry for trying to protect my family. Murmurs ran through the assembled council. Garrett looked smug, certain of victory, but Alpha Aldrich's expression was thoughtful. Beta Garrett has provided documentation of your exile from Riverside. Aldrich continued. He claims you were removed for political reasons following your parents' deaths. Is this accurate? Yes, Alpha. Then the exile was illegal under werewolf law. Aldrich's statement sent shockwaves through the room. Pack members cannot be exiled without cause, and political inconvenience is not cause. You and your brother are victims of injustice, not perpetrators of it. Hope flickered in Elena's eyes. Alpha, However, Aldrich interrupted. You did lie to gain entry to my territory. That cannot be overlooked. He steepled his fingers, considering. I'm inclined to grant you asylum and make your presence here legal. But pack law requires that you have a sponsor, someone who will vouch for your character and be responsible for your integration into Shadowmere. Cale didn't think. He simply acted, stepping forward from his position at the back of the room. I'll sponsor them. Every head turned toward him. The council chamber fell silent, except for the crackling of torches on the walls. Alpha Aldrich's eyebrows rose. Cale Thornridge, I didn't realize you were in attendance. I apologize for the intrusion, Alpha, but I'm volunteering to sponsor Elena and Marcus Thorn. I'll be responsible for them, vouch for their character, and ensure their integration into the pack. Garrett laughed harshly. You? A Sigma who's been rejected by half the unmated females in this pack is going to sponsor refugees? That's absurd. Why? Cale challenged. Because I don't have status? Because I'm not part of the hierarchy? Elena and Marcus don't need a politically connected sponsor. They need someone who understands what it's like to be an outsider, someone who won't judge them for circumstances beyond their control. The Sigma has a point, one of the elder council members said. Sponsorship doesn't require rank, only commitment and good character. Thornridge has served this pack faithfully for years. He's unreliable, Garrett argued. Sigmas can't maintain stable relationships. That's why he's been rejected so many times. How can he be responsible for 2 refugees when he can barely maintain connections with his own pack? The words were designed to wound, and they did. But before Cale could respond, Elena spoke up. Cale Thornridge saved my brother's life at great personal risk. He's been nothing but honorable and kind to us. If he's willing to sponsor us, then I trust him completely. And frankly, his so-called lack of stable relationships says more about this pack's prejudices than it does about his character. The chamber erupted into debate. Some council members supported Cale's sponsorship. Others, led by Garrett, opposed it. Alpha Aldrich let the argument continue for several minutes before raising his hand for silence. Enough, he said. Cale Thornridge, approach. Cale walked forward, aware of every eye on him. He'd never been comfortable with attention, but he forced himself to stand straight and meet Aldrich's gaze directly. You're volunteering to sponsor these refugees, Aldrich said. Do you understand what that entails? You'll be financially responsible for them until they're established. Any crimes they commit will reflect on you. If they fail to integrate, you'll face consequences. Are you prepared for that burden? Yes, Alpha. Why? Aldrich's question was genuine curiosity. You owe them nothing. Cale thought about the answer carefully. He could cite duty or pack loyalty or a dozen other politically acceptable reasons. But Elena had asked for honesty, and he would give it, because they deserve a chance. Alpha, because they've been failed by the system that was supposed to protect them, and someone needs to make that right. And because... He glanced at Elena, saw the hope in her eyes. Because I care about them. Because for the first time in my life, I have people who matter to me, and I'm not going to let them go without a fight. Silence fell over the chamber. Then, slowly, Alpha Aldrich smiled. Very well. I accept your sponsorship of Elena and Marcus Thorn. They are hereby granted asylum in Shadowmere Pack, contingent on your continued support and their good behavior. He looked at Elena and Marcus. "Welcome to Shadowmere. May you find here what your previous pack failed to provide." The relief that washed over Elena's face made every risk worth it. Marcus was crying openly, gratitude written in every line of his young face. And Cale felt something he'd never experienced before, the absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice. After the council meeting, Elena found Cale in the hallway. She threw her arms around him, nearly knocking him off balance. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Cale held her tightly, breathing in her jasmine scent. "I meant what I said in there, about caring for you." Elena pulled back enough to look at him. "I care for you too. More than I should, probably. More than is smart, given our circumstances." What if our circumstances changed? The words were out before Cale could stop them. "What do you mean?" "Elena, I know we haven't known each other long. I know I'm not the ideal choice. I'm Sigma. I have no status. I've been rejected more times than I can count. But you make me want to try again. You make me believe I could be enough for someone." Elena's "Let me finish." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away the moisture on her cheeks. "I'm not asking you to mate with me right now. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to consider it. If you'd give me a chance to prove that all those women were wrong about me, that I could be the partner you deserve." "You already are," Elena said fiercely. "Don't you understand? You've been everything I could want from the moment you stepped out of the shadows to protect me. You're brave and loyal and kind. You see me, really see me, not just as a refugee or a maid or someone to be pitied. You see me as Elena, because that's who you are." Cale's wolf was howling with joy, sensing what was coming. "You're brilliant and strong and stubborn. You fight for what you love. You turned your exile into an opportunity. You're extraordinary, Elena Thorne." She rose on her toes and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, but it quickly deepened into something hungry and desperate. Cale pulled her closer, pouring years of loneliness and rejection into the kiss, trying to show her what words couldn't express. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "So is that a yes?" Cale asked, his voice rough. Elena laughed, the sound bright and beautiful. "Yes, yes, I'll consider mating with you. I'll more than consider it. She stopped herself, blushing. "We should probably take this slowly. There are rituals, proper ways to do things. I don't care about rituals." Cale rested his forehead against hers. "I just care about you." But taking things slowly proved more difficult than either anticipated. The pack's reaction to Cale's sponsorship of the Thorns was mixed. Some wolves respected his commitment. Others saw it as confirmation that he was too soft, too emotional, too unstable to be trusted. Garrett, in particular, seemed determined to prove Cale's unworthiness. It started with small things: patrol assignments in the most dangerous areas, paperwork that mysteriously went missing, oversights that left Cale without backup during critical situations. But it escalated when Garrett began spreading rumors about Elena. "I heard she's using Thornridge," one wolf whispered to another in the estate's dining hall, not realizing Elena was nearby, playing on his desperation, because she needs protection. Everyone knows Sigmas are easy to manipulate. They're so hungry for connection, they'll believe anything. Elena had learned to ignore gossip during her months in exile, but hearing Cale's pain weaponized against him sparked something fierce in her chest. She marched up to the gossiping wolves and fixed them with a glare that would have made her father proud. "If I hear another word suggesting I'm manipulating Cale, I'll file a formal complaint with the Alpha King about workplace harassment," she said coldly. "And trust me, I know exactly what constitutes illegal behavior from pack members. I've been on the receiving end of it before." The wolves scattered, but the damage was done. That evening, when Elena met Cale at his cabin, she found him withdrawn and tense. "I heard what happened," he said without preamble. "You shouldn't have confronted them. They were insulting you, insulting us. They were telling the truth." Cale's voice was flat. "I am desperate. I am easy to manipulate. And you probably could do better than a rejected Sigma with no status and too many enemies." Elena felt her temper flare. Don't you dare let their poison into your head. We've been over this. Kale. I'm not with you because I need protection. I have my own strength. I'm with you because I choose to be. Beautiful from the rubble of disappointment. 20 rejections had led to one perfect acceptance. And that made all the difference. Why? The question was raw, vulnerable. Why would you choose this? Choose me? You could find an alpha or a beta, someone who could give you status and security. Instead, you're tied to someone the pack barely tolerates. Because status and security aren't what matter. Elena closed the distance between them, grabbing his face to make him look at her. My parents had status. They were respected and loved, and then they died, and all that status meant nothing. The alpha who was supposed to protect us threw us away like garbage. I learned the hard way that hierarchy and position are illusions. Elena! No, listen to me. You want to know why I choose you? Because when I was desperate and terrified, you didn't hesitate to help me. Because you fight for what's right even when it costs you. Because you're genuine in a world full of politicians and schemers. Because when I'm with you, I feel seen and valued and safe. Her voice softened. Because I'm falling in love with you, you stubborn, self-doubting wolf. Kale went very still. You what? I love you. The words came easier the second time. I'm in love with you, Kale Thornridge, and I don't care what anyone else thinks about it. For a moment, Kale just stared at her. Then he was kissing her with an intensity that stole her breath, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. When he set her down, his eyes were bright with emotion. I love you too, he said. I've loved you since the night you trusted me with your brother's life. Since you looked at me like I was a hero instead of a reject. I love you, Elena. God, I love you. They stayed up all night talking, planning, dreaming about a future that finally seemed possible. Kale admitted his fears about mating, the rituals, the public nature of it, the risk of another rejection. Elena confessed her own worries about being worthy, about dragging him down with her refugee status. We'll face it together, Kale promised. Whatever comes, we'll handle it together. But what came was worse than either could have imagined. A delegation arrived from the Riverside Pack 3 weeks later. They'd heard about Elena and Marcus's asylum in Shadowmere and wanted to discuss the matter with Alpha Aldrich. The discussion turned out to be a demand that the siblings be returned to Riverside to face charges of abandoning the pack. They were exiled, Alpha Aldrich pointed out during the formal hearing. You can't charge them with abandoning a pack that threw them out. The exile was rescinded posthumously. The Riverside Beta claimed smoothly. Our Alpha realized he'd acted rashly and has pardoned them. They're welcome to return home. Elena, sitting between Kale and Marcus, felt cold dread settle in her stomach. That's a lie. He wants us back because we're challenging his authority by surviving without him. If we return, he'll kill us quietly and claim it was an accident. The Riverside Beta smiled, all teeth and no warmth. Such dramatic accusations. Our Alpha simply wishes to make amends for past mistakes. Then why now? Kale demanded. Why wait months to suddenly care about their welfare? We only recently learned their location, the Beta replied. Someone filed a report with the Werewolf Council about illegal refugees in Shadowmere territory. Imagine our surprise when we discovered it was the Thorn siblings. Garrett. It had to be Garrett. He'd reported them to the council, which had alerted Riverside Pack. The bastard was trying to force Elena and Marcus back into danger to punish Kale for his Sigma nature. Alpha Aldrich's expression had gone ice cold. The Thorns had been granted legal asylum here. Shadowmere law supersedes Riverside's claims on them. Actually, the Riverside Beta said, pulling out documents, Council law states that pack members cannot seek asylum in another territory without formal release papers from their original Alpha. The Thorns have no such papers. Technically, they're still Riverside Wolves, and we're within our rights to reclaim them. The legal maneuvering continued for hours. Elena watched helplessly as her future was debated by wolves who saw her as a political chess piece rather than a person. Marcus was shaking beside her, terrified of being sent back to the pack that had destroyed their lives. When the hearing finally adjourned for the day, no decision had been made, but it was clear which way things were leaning. The law was technically on Riverside's side, and Alpha Aldrich couldn't violate council regulations without risking war. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She stood on Cale's porch, staring into the darkness, trying to figure out a solution that didn't exist. "We could run," Cale said, joining her. "Take Marcus and disappear. Go somewhere neither pack can find us. And live as rogues, always running, never belonging anywhere." Elena shook her head. "That's not a life. That's just survival. It's better than you going back to Riverside." "Is it?" Elena turned to face him. "Cale, if we run, you'll be exiled from Shadowmere for helping us escape. You'll lose everything, your home, your job, your pack. I can't ask you to give up that much." "You're not asking. I'm offering." He pulled her into his arms. "Elena, I told you I'd fight for you. I meant it. If running is what it takes, then we run." She buried her face in his chest, breathing in his pine and earth scent. "There has to be another way." "Then we'll find it." The solution came from an unexpected source. The next morning, as the hearing resumed, Marcus stood and addressed the assembly. "I invoke the right of challenge," he said, his young voice surprisingly steady. The room erupted into shocked murmurs. The right of challenge was an ancient law, rarely used, that allowed any wolf to challenge their alpha for leadership if they believed the alpha had acted unjustly. "You're barely 18, the Riverside beta scoffed. "You'd be slaughtered." "Maybe," Marcus agreed, "but the law doesn't specify age requirements. And if I challenge your alpha and lose, at least Elena will be free. The law states that immediate family of a challenger cannot be punished for the challenger's actions." Elena was on her feet instantly. "Absolutely not. Marcus, you can't." "I can, and I will." Marcus looked at his sister with fierce determination. "You protected me our whole lives. Let me protect you this time." "He'll kill you," Elena said desperately. "Our alpha is vicious and experienced. You've had minimal combat training. This is suicide. Then I'll die knowing I saved you." Marcus's eyes were wet but resolute. "I got us into this mess with the rogues. Let me get us out." Cale had been silent, but now he stepped forward. "There's another option. I invoke the right of substitution." The room went silent. The right of substitution was even rarer than the right of challenge. It allowed another wolf to fight in place of the challenger if certain conditions were met. "You can't substitute for him," Garrett objected. "You're not family." "Actually," Alpha Aldrich said slowly, "the law allows for substitution by any wolf who has a formal bond. Sponsorship qualifies as a formal bond." The Riverside Beta's confident expression faltered. "You would risk your life for a refugee?" Without hesitation, Cale replied, "Marcus, I appreciate your courage, but this fight is mine. I sponsored you and Elena. I take responsibility for your protection." "You don't have to do this," Elena said, gripping his arm. "Cale, their alpha is dangerous. He's killed challengers before." "So have I." Cale's voice was hard. "I survived 20 rejections, fought off an entire rogue camp alone, and spent years training myself to be one of the best fighters in Shadowmere. I'm not afraid of one corrupt alpha." But Elena was afraid. She finally found someone who loved her, who saw her worth, and now he was going to risk his life because her former pack couldn't let go. The challenge was set for 3 days hence, giving Cale time to prepare. The location would be neutral ground, overseen by council representatives to ensure fairness. If Cale won, Elena and Marcus would be permanently released from Riverside Pack with no further claims. If he lost, Elena couldn't think about that possibility. The next 3 days were a blur of training and preparation. Cale worked with Shadowmere's best fighters, honing his skills and developing strategy. Elena watched, her heart in her throat, tore between pride at his dedication and terror at what he was about to face. "He's good," one of the trainers admitted to her. "Better than I expected. Being Sigma means he fights differently. No pack tactics to fall back on, but also no predictability. He's creative, adaptive. He has a chance." A chance wasn't enough for Elena. She wanted certainty. She wanted Cale safe. The night before the challenge, they lay together in his bed, neither sleeping. Cale traced patterns on her skin, memorizing her as if this might be their last night together. "If something happens to me," he started. "Don't." Elena interrupted. "Don't talk like that." "Elena, we have to be realistic. The Riverside Alpha has decades of experience and pack support. I'm one Sigma wolf fighting for people most of Shadowmere barely acknowledges. The odds aren't in my favor. Then we run. Right now, tonight, we'll take Marcus and disappear before challenge." Kale kissed her forehead. "You said that wasn't a life worth living." "I was wrong. Any life with you is worth living. I don't care for rogues or refugees or anything else. I just want you alive. And I want you free." Kale tilted her chin up, so she had to meet his eyes. "Elena, listen to me. I've spent my entire life feeling like I didn't matter, like I was just taking up space in a world that didn't want me. But then I met you, and suddenly everything made sense. All those rejections, all that loneliness, it was leading me to you. You make me want to be better, stronger, braver. You make me want to fight." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "You're already all those things, because you see them in me." He wiped away her tears with gentle fingers. "Tomorrow, I'm going to fight for you. And I'm going to win, because losing is an option when the prize is the rest of my life with you. Promise me." Elena whispered, "Promise me you'll come back to me." "I promise." The challenge took place in a clearing at the border between Shadowmere and neutral territory. Hundreds of wolves had gathered to watch. Representatives from both packs, council observers, and curious onlookers drawn by the spectacle of the Sigma fighting an Alpha. Kale stood on one side of the clearing, his expression calm and focused. Across from him stood Alpha Darius of Riverside Pack, a massive wolf with silver-streaked fur and scars covering his body. He looked at Kale with contempt. "You're the Sigma," Darius said, his voice carrying across the clearing. "The reject who thinks he can challenge me? This will be over in minutes." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Kale replied evenly. The council representative stepped forward to explain the rules. This would be a traditional challenge fight. No weapons, no outside interference. Combat in wolf form until one fighter submitted or was unable to continue. Death was permitted but not required. Elena stood at the edge of the clearing with Marcus, her nails digging into her palms. Alpha Aldrich had positioned himself nearby, his expression grave. Garrett watched on the opposite side, looking disappointed that his scheme had backfired. If Kale won, he'd be a hero, raising his status in the pack. The signal was given. Both fighters shifted. Alpha Darius's wolf was huge, easily 50 pounds heavier than Kale's charcoal gray form. But Kale was faster, more agile. He darted in for first strike, testing Darius's defenses, then retreated before the Alpha could counter. Darius charged, using his weight advantage to try to overwhelm Kale. They collided with bone-jarring force, snapping and clawing at each other. Blood flew, fur tore. The sounds of the fight were brutal. Snarling, yelping, the crunch of teeth on flesh. Kale fought with everything he had. He used his smaller size to his advantage, ducking under Darius's attacks and striking at vulnerable points. But the Alpha was experienced and ruthless. He anticipated Kale's movements, countering with devastating efficiency. A lucky strike from Darius caught Kale across the ribs, and Elena heard herself cry out. Kale stumbled but recovered quickly, shaking off the pain. He circled warily, looking for an opening. The fight continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Both wolves were tiring, both covered in blood and injuries, but neither would submit. Then Kale made his move. He feinted left, drawing Darius's attack, then pivoted right and went for the Alpha's throat. It was a risky maneuver. If he missed, he'd leave himself completely exposed. But he didn't miss. His jaws closed around Darius's throat, not quite breaking the skin, but apply enough pressure to make the threat clear. Submit or die. For a long moment, Darius struggled. Then, slowly, he went limp in submission. The clearing erupted in noise, cheering, shouting, wolves howling. Kale released Darius and stepped back, his wolf form swaying with exhaustion. He'd won. Elena was running before she realized she'd moved. Shifting mid-stride and reaching Kale just as his legs buckled, she supported his weight, nuzzling against him, making sure he was alive and whole. Cale shifted back to human form, grimacing at his injuries. "Told you I'd come back to you," he managed, his voice hoarse. "You magnificent idiot," Elena sobbed, also shifting so she could hold him properly. "You absolute fool. I thought I was going to lose you. Not a chance." He kissed her, tasting of blood and victory. "I've got too much to live for now." The council representative approached, flanked by the Riverside Beta, who looked utterly defeated. "The challenge has been decided. Cale Thornridge has won the right of challenge. Elena and Marcus Thorne are hereby permanently released from Riverside Pack with no further claims or obligations. Alpha Darius, do you acknowledge this outcome?" Darius, back in human form and nursing his wounds, nodded curtly. Acknowledged. It was over. They were truly free. The healers descended on Cale, insisting on treating his injuries despite his protests. Elena refused to leave his side, holding his hand while they worked. Marcus hovered nearby, his face a mixture of relief and gratitude. Alpha Aldrich approached once the healers had finished. "That was well fought, Thornridge. You've proven yourself a valuable member of Shadowmere today." "Thank you, Alpha. I believe congratulations are in order as well." Aldrich smiled knowingly. "I understand you've been courting young Elena here, given your sponsorship and now your victory on her behalf. I expect there will be a mating announcement soon." Cale looked at Elena, his eyes asking question. She smiled through her tears and nodded. "Yes, Alpha." Cale said, never looking away from Elena. "There will be an announcement very soon." The mating ritual took place 1 month later, giving Cale time to heal and both of them time to properly prepare. Unlike the rituals Cale had attended as a hopeful participant, this one felt different. He wasn't waiting to be chosen, hoping someone would see his worth. He was standing beside a woman who'd already chosen him, who'd proven her commitment in ways that went far beyond ceremony. The pack gathered under full moon once more, but this time Cale wasn't lurking at the edges. He stood at the center of the ceremonial grounds, wearing traditional mating attire, waiting for Elena to join him. Marcus stood beside him as his chosen second, the boy grinning widely. "Nervous?" Marcus asked. "Terrified," Cale admitted. "Not of Elena, rejecting me, but of all these wolves watching, judging. Part of me keeps waiting for someone to object, to say I don't deserve her. Then they'd have to go through me," Marcus said fiercely. "You saved my life, Cale. You gave us a home. Anyone who has a problem with you, and Elena will answer to me." Cale smiled at the boy. No, the young man beside him. "When did you get so tough?" "I learned from the best." The ceremonial drums began, their rhythm primal and ancient. The crowd parted, and Elena appeared, walking toward him in a flowing white dress that seemed to glow in the moonlight. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, flowers woven through the dark strands. She was breathtaking, but it was her eyes that held Cale transfixed, those amber eyes that had seen him from the beginning, that had looked past his Sigma status to the man beneath. They were filled with love and certainty and joy. She reached him and took his hands. The pack elder stepped forward to begin the ceremony, speaking words that had been used for centuries to bind wolves together. But Cale barely heard them. He was too focused on Elena, on the feel of her hands in his, on the mate bond that was already forming between them, a golden thread connecting their souls. "Cale Thornridge," the elder said, pulling his attention back. "Do you accept Elena Thorne as your mate? Do you vow to protect her, cherish her, and stand by her side through all the days of your life?" "I do," Cale said, his voice strong and clear. "With everything I am." "Elena Thorne, do you accept Cale Thornridge as your mate? Do you vow to support him, honor him, and walk beside him through all the challenges life may bring?" "I do," Elena replied, her eyes never leaving Cale's face. "Now and always." The elder took their joined hands and wrapped them with a ceremonial cord. "Then by the laws of our kind and the witness of the moon above, I declare you mated. May your bond be strong, your love enduring, and your life together filled with joy." The cord was removed, but the bond remained. Cale could feel it settling into place, a connection that went deeper than words or ceremony. Elena was his mate, his partner, his everything. He pulled her close and kissed her as the pack erupted into howls of celebration. Some of the wolves cheering were the same ones who rejected him or made his life difficult. But Cale found he didn't care anymore. Their opinions had lost their power over him. All that mattered was a woman in his arms and the future they would build together. They danced under the moon, surrounded by celebrating pack members. Alpha Aldrich approached with a knowing smile and a formal announcement. Cale was being promoted to lead security for the state, a position with significantly higher status and responsibility. Garrett, who'd been found guilty of filing false reports to the council, had been demoted. "You've proven yourself loyal and capable," Aldrich said. "I should have recognized your value sooner. Sometimes it takes extraordinary circumstances to reveal extraordinary character." Later, as they walked back to Cale's cabin, now their cabin, Elena leaned against his side, contentment radiating from her through their new bond. "So this is what happiness feels like," she mused. "I'd almost forgotten." "Get used to it," Cale replied. "I plan on making sure you feel this way every day for the rest of our lives." "That's a big promise." "I'm good at keeping promises." He stopped walking and turned to face her, cupping her face in his hands. 20 women rejected me. Elena, 20 times I thought I'd never find my place, never find my person. And then you appeared in that forest, desperate and brave and absolutely perfect. Every rejection led me to you. I'd go through it all again if it meant ending up here." Elena rose on her toes to kiss him. "No more rejections. No more loneliness. Just us, building something beautiful together." "Just us," Cale agreed. They reached the cabin as the moon reached its zenith. Inside, away from the pack's prying eyes, they could finally be alone. Cale lit candles while Elena explored the small space that was now hers as much as his. "I love what you've done with it," she said, running her fingers over the handmade furniture, the carefully organized bookshelf, the little touches that made the cabin a home. "It's very you, strong, practical, but with hidden softness." "Hidden softness?" Cale raised an eyebrow. Elena pointed to a shelf where he displayed a collection of river stones, each one smooth and unique. "You collect beautiful things. You just don't advertise it." "I collect things that matter to me," Cale corrected, moving to stand behind her. "And now I have the most beautiful thing of all." She turned in his arms, her expression soft. "I still can't believe this is real sometimes, that I get to keep you." "Believe it." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. "I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me, Elena Thornridge." She laughed at the name. "That's going to take some getting used to." "We have time. We have all the time in the world." They spent the night talking and laughing and planning their future. Elena wanted to continue working at the estate, but now with proper acknowledgement and pay. Cale would take on his new security role, training younger wolves and building a team that valued skill over status. Marcus had been accepted into the pack's warrior training program, showing promise that surprised even Alpha Aldrich. As dawn approached and they lay tangled together, Elena traced the scars on Cale's chest, marks from fights, from rejections, from years of struggle. "These tell a story," she said softly. "Every one of them led you to this moment." "Our moment," Cale corrected. "Our moment," she agreed. In the days and weeks that followed, Cale discovered what it meant to truly belong. Not because of his position in the pack hierarchy. He was still Sigma, still independent. But because he'd built something that mattered. A family, a home, a purpose beyond mere survival. The pack's attitude toward him shifted gradually. Some wolves remained distant, uncomfortable with his Sigma nature. But others began to seek him out, asking for training advice or simply offering greetings when their paths crossed. His victory in the challenge had earned respect, but his dedication to Elena and Marcus had earned something more valuable: acceptance. Garrett, bitter about his demotion, tried to cause trouble one last time. He spread rumors that Cale had only mated Elena to gain status. That was a calculated political move rather than genuine love. The rumors might have gained traction once, but now they fell flat. Too many wolves had witnessed Cale's dedication, had seen him risk his life for refugees he had no obligation to protect. Elena confronted Garrett directly in the estate's courtyard, her anger cold and controlled. "You tried to destroy us," she said, her voice carrying to the gathered crowd. "You reported us to the council. Tried to send us back to a pack that wanted us dead, all because you couldn't stand seeing a Sigma wolf find happiness. But you failed. We're here, we're mated, and we're stronger than ever. And you're a bitter man who can't stand to see others succeed." Garrett's face flushed with rage. "You're nobody, just a refugee who got lucky." "Maybe," Elena agreed, "but I'd rather be a lucky refugee than an unlucky coward who uses politics and manipulation instead of facing challenges directly." The gathered wolves murmured agreement, and Garrett stormed off. His power in the pack diminished beyond repair. Elena returned to Cale's side, slipping her hand into his. "That was intense," Cale said, pride warming his voice. He deserved worse. Elena squeezed his hand. "No one threatens my family," and walks away unscathed. Family. The word resonated deep in Cale's chest. He had a family now. Elena, Marcus, and eventually others if they chose to have children. The lonely Sigma who'd existed on the fringes of pack life had built something solid and real. 6 months after the mating ceremony, Elena announced she was pregnant. The news sent Cale into a panic of joy and terror. He'd barely adjusted to being a mate. How could he possibly be a father? "The same way you've done everything else," Elena said, laughing at his expression. "With dedication and love, and that stubborn determination that won't let you fail. But what if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough?" Elena cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Cale Thornridge, listen to me. You are going to be an amazing father. You're patient, protective, and kind. You know what it's like to feel unwanted, which means you'll make sure our child always knows they're loved. Stop doubting yourself." "I'm not sure I know how to stop," Cale admitted. "Then I'll remind you every day until you believe it." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Cale drove Elena slightly crazy with his overprotectiveness. He insisted she avoid heavy lifting, eat specific foods, rest constantly. She tolerated it with amusement and occasional exasperation, knowing it came from love rather than control. Marcus, thrilled at the prospect of being an uncle, threw himself into preparing for the baby. He built a crib with his own hands, carved toys from wood, and read every book about werewolf development he could find. His transformation from troubled youth to responsible young man was complete, and Cale took pride in having played a part in that change. The baby, a daughter they named Luna, was born during a winter storm. She came into the world howling, her lungs powerful and her grip surprisingly strong when she wrapped tiny fingers around Cale's thumb. He stared at her in wonder, this perfect creature that he and Elena had created, and felt something shift fundamentally in his soul. "She's beautiful," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She's perfect." "She's ours," Elena said, exhaustion and joy mixing in her voice. "Our miracle." Luna grew quickly, displaying the enhanced development typical of werewolf children. By 6 months, she was walking. By a year, she could shift between human and wolf form, though she preferred staying in her chubby toddler body, where she could hug her parents and uncle more easily. Cale proved to be exactly the father Elena had predicted, devoted, patient, endlessly loving. He taught Luna to track scents before she could properly talk, showed her the safe paths through the forest, and told her stories about honor and courage and standing up for what was right. "Your daddy was very brave," Elena told Luna one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. 20 women said no to him, but he didn't give up hope. "And then he met me and everything changed." "Why they say no?" Luna asked in her toddler voice, her amber eyes, so like her mother's, filled with confusion. "Because they were foolish," Elena replied. "They didn't see how special he was. But that's okay, because it meant he was waiting for me." Cale, listening from inside the cabin, felt his throat tighten with emotion. He'd been so afraid that his past would haunt him forever, that the rejections would define him. But Elena had redefined him. She'd seen potential where others saw failure, strength where others saw weakness. He joined them on the porch, scooping Luna into his arms and settling beside Elena. Their daughter immediately began chattering about her day, the butterflies she'd chased, the song Marcus had taught her, the way the sun looked on the water. Simple moments. Normal family life. Everything Cale had never dared to dream he could have. What are you thinking? Elena asked, leaning against his shoulder. That I was right, Cale replied. All those rejections were just the universe saving me for you. For this. For us. No regrets. Not a single one. He kissed her temple, then Luna's forehead. I'd endure 100 rejections if it meant ending up here, with you two and Marcus and our family. This is everything I never knew I wanted. Elena smiled and tilted her face up for a proper kiss. Good, because you're stuck with us forever. Promise? Promise. As the sun set over Shadowmere territory, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Cale Thornridge, once the rejected Sigma, now a mate father and valued pack member, held his family close and knew he'd finally found his place. Not at the top of the hierarchy or even within it, but beside it, creating something uniquely his own. Years passed, and the family flourished. Luna grew into a strong, confident child who inherited her father's independence and her mother's fierce determination. She had no interest in pack politics or traditional roles, preferred to spend her time exploring the forest and asking endless questions about everything she encountered. She's definitely your daughter, Elena teased one evening, watching as Cale patiently explained the difference between wolf tracks and coyote tracks for the 100th time. That same stubborn curiosity. And your courage, Cale replied. Did you see her challenge that older pup in training yesterday? She didn't back down even though he was twice her size. Elena's expression turned concerned. I hope she doesn't inherit too much of our rebellious streak. Life is easier when you fit in. Maybe, Cale said thoughtfully, but would you change who she is? Would you want her to be someone who compromises herself for acceptance? Never. Elena's answer was immediate and fierce. I want her to be exactly who she is, unapologetically herself. Then she's perfect the way she is, just like her mother. Marcus, now fully grown and an accomplished warrior, had also found his place in the pack. He'd earned respect through skill and dedication, proving that his past mistakes didn't define his future. He still lived near Cale and Elena, unable to stray far from the sister who protected him and the brother-in-law who'd saved him. One evening, Marcus arrived at their cabin with news that changed everything. I've been offered a position, he said, his expression torn between excitement and anxiety. Alpha Aldrich wants me to lead a diplomatic mission to the northern packs. It's a huge honor, but it means being away for at least 6 months. Elena's face showed her conflict. Pride at her brother's achievement, sadness at the thought of separation. The northern packs are dangerous territory right now. There's been talk of territorial disputes, which is exactly why they need skilled diplomats, Marcus replied. Elena, this is my chance to really contribute, to be someone who matters. You already matter, she protested. I know, but I want to matter beyond this pack, beyond being Elena's brother or the kid Cale saved. I want to build my own reputation. Cale understood that desire intimately. You should go, he said. Take the opportunity. We'll be here when you return. Marcus smiled gratefully. I knew you'd understand. After Marcus left, Elena was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. I'm terrified something will happen to him, that I'll lose him like I lost our parents. You won't, Cale assured her, pulling her close. Marcus is strong and smart. We taught him well. He'll come back to us. How can you be so sure? Because he has something worth coming back to. Family, home, love. Those are powerful motivators. Marcus's departure left a hole in their daily lives, but it also opened new opportunities. With Luna old enough to attend pack school during the day, Elena decided to pursue her own ambitions. She'd always been intelligent and observant, qualities that had helped her survive exile. Now she used them to revolutionize the estate's management systems. She proposed new organizational structures, efficiency improvements, and worker protections that caught Alpha Aldrich's attention. Within months, she'd been promoted from housekeeping to administrative leadership, overseeing operations for the entire estate. Look at us, Cale said one evening, watching Elena review budget reports while Luna practiced her letters at the table. We've come so far from that night in the forest. Elena looked up, a smile playing at her lips. When you stepped out of the shadows and scared me half to death. I prefer to think of it as making a dramatic entrance. You certainly made an impression. She set aside her work and moved to sit beside him. Do you ever miss the solitude? Before me, before Luna, before all this responsibility? Cale considered the question seriously. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, not having to worry about anyone but myself. But I don't miss the loneliness. I don't miss feeling like I didn't matter. This, he gestured to encompass their home, their daughter, their life. This is worth every complication. Even when Luna tracks mud through the house, or when I'm stressed about work, or when Marcus sends letters about dangerous situations in the north. Especially then. Cale kissed her softly. The messy parts are what make it real, Elena. Perfect would be boring. I'll take our chaotic, complicated, beautiful reality over pristine loneliness any day. Their conversation was interrupted by Luna, who'd finished her letters and now demanded attention. Papa, tell story. About when you fought the bad alpha. Cale groaned. Again? You've heard that story 100 times. Want hear 101 times. So Cale told the story again, though he edited out the more violent details for his young daughter. He focused on the courage it took to stand up for what was right, the importance of protecting family, and the power of love to motivate extraordinary acts. Luna listened with rapt attention, her amber eyes wide. When the story ended, she declared, "When I grow up, I be brave like Papa." "You're already brave," Elena told her. "You just need to grow into it." The years continued to unfold, bringing both challenges and triumphs. Marcus returned from the north covered in glory, having successfully negotiated a peace treaty that prevented war. He'd also met someone, a female warrior named Iris, who matched his determination with her own fierce spirit. "She reminds me of you," Marcus told Elena when he introduced them. "Strong, uncompromising, absolutely terrified when angry." "I like her already," Elena replied. Cale's reputation continued to grow within the pack. He developed a training program specifically for wolves who didn't fit traditional molds, sigmas, omegas, anyone who struggled with conventional pack structure. His methods were unorthodox but effective, producing warriors who could think independently while still functioning as a team. Alpha Aldrich appointed him to the council, an unprecedented honor for a sigma. Some wolves objected, clinging to traditional hierarchy. But Aldrich was firm. "Thornridge has proven his worth 1,000 times over," the Alpha King declared. "His perspective is exactly what this council needs. Someone who understands what it means to be outside the system, yet chooses to serve it anyway." Cale accepted the position with characteristic humility, though Elena knew he was pleased. That evening, she found him on their porch, staring at the forest with a contemplative expression. "Councilmember Thornridge," she teased, settling beside him. "How does it feel to finally have the recognition you deserved all along?" "Strange," Cale admitted. "Part of me still expects someone to realize it's a mistake, to take it away. Those voices in your head, the ones that tell you you're not enough, they're liars." Elena took his hand. "You need to stop listening to them." "I'm trying. It's just old habits." "Then let me remind you of the truth." Elena turned to face him fully. "You are brilliant, brave, and valuable. You built a family from nothing. You've changed this pack for the better. You've raised a daughter who's confident and strong. You've given refugees a second chance. You matter, Cale, not because of a council position or any title, but because of who you are." Cale pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "How do you always know what to say?" "Because I love you, and because I've spent years watching you doubt yourself when everyone else can see how incredible you are." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "Promise me something. Promise me you'll try to see yourself the way I see you." "That's a tall order." "Try anyway." So Cale tried. He worked on the council, advocating for outsiders, and implementing policies that made Shadowmere more inclusive. He trained his unconventional students, helping them find confidence in their differences. He came home each evening to a mate who loved him and a daughter who adored him, and slowly, gradually, he began to believe he deserved it all. Luna grew into adolescence with the same independent spirit she'd shown as a child. She had friends but didn't need them to define her. She respected the pack hierarchy, but didn't let it constrain her. She was in every way her father's daughter, a Sigma in all but official designation. She's going to be a handful during her teenage years, Elena predicted, watching Luna argue passionately with her tutors about pack law. She already is, Cale replied, but his tone was affectionate. Remember when she challenged the beta's son to a fight because he said Sigmas were inferior? She won, didn't she? Decisively. The beta wasn't pleased, but he couldn't argue with results. Elena laughed. She's going to change this pack, Cale, just like you did. As Luna approached maturity, Cale found himself confronting old fears. Would she face the same rejections he had? Would other wolves see her independence as a flaw rather than a strength? Would she inherit his pain along with his nature? His concerns came to a head when Luna announced she had no interest in traditional mating rituals. "I don't want to stand in a clearing waiting for someone to choose me," she declared one evening at dinner. "That's archaic and degrading. If I meet someone worth mating, it'll be because we're equals, not because of some ceremonial selection process." "The rituals have been tradition for centuries," Elena said carefully, though Cale could hear the approval in her voice. "Then maybe it's time for new traditions." Luna looked at her father. "You hated those rituals, didn't you, Papa? You went through them anyway, got rejected 20 times, and then met Mama without any ceremony at all. Why should I repeat your suffering?" Cale exchanged glances with Elena. Their daughter was too perceptive, too intelligent to accept easy answers. "You're right," he said finally. "The rituals served a purpose once, but they're not the only way. If you choose to find your mate differently, that's your decision. Just don't close yourself off completely. Don't let fear of rejection prevent you from being open to connection. Is that what happened to you?" The question was blunt, typical of Luna's directness. Cale considered lying, softening the truth, but decided she deserved honesty. "Yes, after enough rejections, I started building walls. I convinced myself I didn't need anyone, that solitude was better than risk. Then your mother appeared in my life and proved me wrong. The walls I built almost kept me from the best thing that ever happened to me." Luna absorbed this, her young face serious. "So you're saying I should stay open but not desperate? Strong but not closed off?" "Exactly." Cale smiled at his daughter. "Be yourself, Luna. The right wolf will see your strength as an asset, not a threat. And if they don't, then they're not the right wolf. Like those 20 women who rejected you." "Like those 20 women," Cale agreed. "Who, in retrospect, did me a favor. Because if any of them had said yes, I wouldn't have been available when your mother needed help in that forest." Luna grinned. "So rejection was actually the universe helping you?" "Something like that." The conversation stayed with Cale long after Luna went to bed. He realized that his daughter had given him an unexpected gift. Proof that his struggles had meaning, that his pain had purpose. By living authentically despite the cost, he'd shown Luna that she could do the same. "You're thinking too loud," Elena murmured, curling against him in bed. "I can practically hear your thoughts." "Just reflecting on how much has changed," Cale replied. 20 years ago, I was a rejected Sigma no one wanted. Now I have you, Luna, Marcus, Iris, a position on the council, respect from wolves who once ignored me. It seems impossible. It's not impossible. It's what happens when someone refuses to give up, even when everything seems hopeless. Elena propped herself up on one elbow. "You never stop trying, Cale. You never let the rejections break you completely. That's why you have all this now, because you kept moving forward." "I wanted to give up," Cale admitted. "After the 20th rejection, I seriously considered leaving the pack entirely, becoming a rogue." "What stopped you? Stubborn pride, maybe, or the knowledge that leaving would mean admitting defeat." "I couldn't let those wolves have that power over me." He traced patterns on Elena's arm, and some small part of me still hoped. Even when it seemed futile, even when logic said I should quit, I hoped. "I'm glad you did." Elena kissed him softly. "Because that hope led you to save a desperate woman and her brother in a dark forest. And that moment changed all our lives." They lay in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from years of partnership. Through the window, the moon cast silver light across their room, the same moon that had witnessed Cale's rejections and later his triumph. "Do you think Luna will be happy?" Elena asked quietly. "Really happy the way we are? I think she'll find her own version of happiness," Cale replied. "It might not look like ours, but it'll be right for her. We've taught her to be strong, to stand up for herself, to never compromise her core values. The rest is up to her." "When did we become wise?" Cale laughed. "I'm not sure we are wise. We just survived enough hardship to learn a few things." More years passed, marked by the steady rhythms of pack life. Luna came of age and, true to her word, ignored traditional mating rituals. She carved her own path, becoming a scout who specialized in long-range territorial assessment. Her independence served her well, and she thrived in the solitary nature of her work. Marcus and Iris mated and had children of their own. Twin boys who visited frequently and looked up to Cale as both uncle and mentor. The cabin that had once housed a lonely Sigma now regularly echoed with laughter and chaos as the extended family gathered for meals and celebrations. Cale's position on the council allowed him to implement lasting changes to pack structure. He advocated successfully for the rights of Sigmas, establishing protections against discrimination and creating paths for non-traditional wolves to contribute meaningfully to pack life. Other packs began adopting similar policies, looking to Shadowmere as a model of progressive governance. "You're becoming famous," Elena teased one evening, reading a letter from a distant pack asking for Cale's advice. "The Sigma who changed werewolf society." "I'm just doing what makes sense," Cale protested, treating wolves as individuals rather than forcing everyone into rigid categories, which is revolutionary whether you admit it or not. Elena set aside the letter. "You've given hope to countless wolves who felt like they didn't belong. That's not nothing, Cale." He pulled her into his lap, marveling that even after decades together, touching her still felt like coming home. "I couldn't have done any of it without you. You were the first wolf to see past my Sigma status, to treat me like I had value. Everything else grew from that." "We saw each other," Elena corrected. "That's what made it work. You saw a refugee who needed help. I saw a hero who'd been overlooked. We both recognized something in each other that the rest of the pack had missed." "The rejected and the exiled," Cale mused. "Not the most auspicious beginning, but an honest one." Elena kissed him, slow and deep, and look where honesty got us. As they celebrated their 20th mating anniversary, surrounded by family and friends, Cale found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this moment. 20 rejections had seemed like an unbearable burden at the time, each one another nail in the coffin of his hopes. But those rejections had shaped him, teaching resilience and self-reliance. They'd stripped away his illusions about pack hierarchy and forced him to find value in himself rather than in others' approval. They prepared him, in a strange way, for Elena, for a relationship based on mutual respect and chosen commitment rather than pack expectations or mating rituals. "Speech," someone called out, and Cale realized the room had gone quiet, everyone waiting for him to say something. He stood, Elena's hand in his, and looked at the gathered wolves, his family, his friends, his pack. Some of these wolves had rejected him once. Others had ignored him. A few had been kind from the beginning. But all of them were here now, celebrating the life he'd built. 20 years ago, Cale began, I stood in a clearing not far from here, watching a mating ritual and feeling like the loneliest wolf alive. I'd been rejected so many times I'd lost count. I convinced myself that I would spend my life alone, that my Sigma nature made me unworthy of the kind of connection everyone else seemed to find so easily. He paused, looking down at Elena. Then I met someone who changed everything. Someone who was brave enough to trust a stranger in the dark. Someone who saw strength where others saw weakness, potential where others saw failure. Elena didn't just become my mate. She taught me to see myself differently, to value what made me unique instead of apologizing for it. Elena's eyes were bright with tears, her hand squeezing his. So here's what I want to say on our 20th anniversary. Rejection is not the end of your story. Those 20 women who turned me down weren't cruel or wrong. They just weren't right for me. Every no was clearing the path to Elena's yes. Every lonely night was bringing me closer to the moment I'd find my true mate. If you're out there struggling, feeling like you don't fit, like you'll never find your place, don't give up. Your person is looking for you too. Your moment is coming. The room erupted in applause. Wolves howled their approval. And Cale sat down, pulling Elena close, marveling at the strange and wonderful way life had unfolded. Later, when the celebration had wound down and they were alone on their porch watching the stars, Elena said, "That was a beautiful speech. I meant every word." "I know." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if one of those 20 women had said yes?" "Sometimes," Cale admitted, "but I can't imagine it being better than this. Those hypothetical lives might have been easier, less complicated, but they wouldn't have been ours. They wouldn't have had you and Luna and everything we built together. No regrets." It was the same question she'd asked years ago, and Cale's answer remained unchanged. Not a single one. Every rejection, every lonely night, every moment of doubt, it was all worth it to end up here with you. He turned to face her fully. "Thank you, Elena, for seeing me when no one else would, for choosing me when you could have walked away, for building this life with me." "Thank you for saving me in that forest," Elena replied, "and for continuing to save me every day since, just by being who you are." They sat in comfortable silence as the moon climbed higher in the night sky. The same moon that had witnessed Cale's rejections now blessed his happiness. The forest that had once been his lonely refuge now surrounded the home he shared with his family. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howled, that ancient call that spoke of longing and belonging, of wild hearts seeking connection. Other wolves answered, their voices weaving together in a symphony of pack life. Cale listened and understood, for the first time in his life, that he was part of that symphony, not despite his Sigma nature, but because of it. His unique voice added harmony to the whole, proving that there was room in the pack for all kinds of wolves, if they were brave enough to keep singing, even when no one seemed to be listening. "Come to bed," Elena said, standing and pulling him to his feet. "We have tomorrow and all the days after to be grateful for our life. Tonight, I just want to fall asleep next to my mate." "Best offer I've had all day," Cale replied, following her inside. As they settled into bed, wrapped in each other's arms, Cale allowed himself one final moment of reflection. The rejected Sigma who'd stood alone at 20 mating rituals was gone, replaced by a wolf who knew his worth, who had found his pack, who had built something.